His storm did not come because Jesus forgot about you. And it did not come because he lost control. Sometimes the storm shows up right after you obey him. That is what makes this story so hard. The disciples were not running away from Jesus. They were following his exact command. Jesus told them to get into the boat. Jesus told them they were going to the other side. Then everything fell apart. So what do you do when you followed God, made the right choice, and life still hits you with a storm? What do you do when you pray, but God feels silent? And what if the storm you think will destroy you is actually preparing you for something greater? Today, we are going to answer those questions. But first, we need to notice one small sentence that changes the entire story. Jesus had just been healing people. He healed a man with leprosy. He healed the servant of a Roman officer. He healed Peter's mother-in-law. He freed people who were trapped under spiritual darkness. Lives were changing everywhere. And when lives change, crowds show up. People want hope. They want healing. They want to know if the God who helps someone else can also help them. But right in the middle of all this excitement, Jesus gave an order. He said they were going to the other side of the sea. Do not miss that. Jesus did not say, let's get into the boat and see what happens. He did not say, maybe we will make it. He said they were going to the other side. That was a promise. And before the storm ever appeared, Jesus had already spoken about how the story would end. But before they entered the boat, two men came to Jesus. The first man said, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." That sounds great. Most leaders would be excited. They would hand him a form, welcome him to the team, and tell him how amazing his new life would be. Jesus did the opposite. He told the man that foxes have holes and birds have nests, but the Son of Man had nowhere to lay his head. In other words, Jesus was saying, do you understand what this will cost you? Following Jesus is not about adding him to a busy life. He is not an app you open when you need help. He is not an emergency number you call when your money is low, your marriage is hurting, or the doctor gives you bad news. Jesus is not an accessory. He is Lord. And when he is Lord, he does not just get one room in your house. He gets the keys. The second man said, "Lord, let me first go and bury my father." Jesus told him, "Follow me and leave the dead to bury their own dead." That sounds harsh until you hear what the man was really saying. He was saying, Jesus, I will follow you later. I will follow you after I handle my plans. I will follow you after I make enough money. I will follow you after I finish having fun. I will follow you after I fix my relationship. I will follow you when life becomes easier. But delayed surrender is still disobedience. You cannot call Jesus Lord and then give him your list of conditions. The sheep do not lead the shepherd. And many of us still have a but first in our lives. Jesus, I will follow you, but first I need to build my career. Jesus, I will obey you, but first I need this relationship to work. Jesus, I will trust you, but first you need to explain everything. But if something always comes before Jesus, then Jesus is not first. And this matters because the people who entered the boat were not perfect people. They were simply people who followed when Jesus said, come. So Jesus entered the boat. The disciples followed him. And without warning, a violent storm exploded over the Sea of Galilee. This was not light rain. The wind screamed between the mountains. The waves rose high. Water poured into the boat. Several of these men were trained fishermen. They knew the water. They had seen rough weather before. But this storm was different. The boat was small. Its sides were low. Every new wave pushed more water inside. They were losing control fast. And maybe that is exactly how your life feels right now. One wave hits your health. Then another hits your family. Then another hits your money. Then another hits your mind. You think, just give me 1 minute to breathe. But another wave comes. Some storms come because we make foolish choices. Some come because we live in a broken world. Some come through the actions of other people. And some storms come while we are doing exactly what God told us to do. That is the storm nobody knows how to explain. You prayed, you obeyed, you tried to honor God, and things still got worse. Your marriage started taking on water. The business failed. Someone you trusted walked away. Your child became sick. The test result came back. The person you loved died. And now you are asking God, why did you let me get into this boat? But remember who told the disciples to enter it. Jesus knew the storm was coming. He was not surprised by the wind. He was not shocked by the waves. And he had already said they were going to the other side. The storm may have been a surprise to the disciples, but it was never a surprise to Jesus. Then the story gives us one of the strangest details in the Bible. The disciples were fighting for their lives. The waves were filling the boat. The wind was roaring, and Jesus was asleep. The disciples were fighting the storm. Jesus was sleeping through it. Have you ever felt like that? Your life is falling apart. You are praying as hard as you can, but from where you stand, it feels like God is asleep. You ask Jesus, where are you? Why are you letting this happen? Do you even care? That is what the disciples asked. They woke Jesus and cried, Lord, save us. We are going to die. Mark's account gives us one more detail. They said, Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? Notice how fast fear changed their view of Jesus. They did not only say, this storm is dangerous. They said, Jesus must not care about us. That is what fear does. It takes a painful moment and turns it into a lie about God. God feels silent, so we decide he is absent. God does not answer the way we hope, so we decide he does not love us. Life does not go according to our plan, so we decide God has lost control. But God's silence is not proof of his absence. And his peace is not proof that he lacks compassion. Jesus was sleeping because he knew something the disciples had forgotten. They were going to the other side. The storm could not cancel his word. The disciples were measuring God's love by the waves, while Jesus was resting in the promise. Now, let me be clear. It is okay to cry out to Jesus. You do not have to hide your fear. You do not have to clean up your words before you pray. God is not afraid of your questions. He is not shocked by your pain. He does not need the fake version of you. He wants the real you. David prayed, my God, why have you forsaken me? That prayer was honest. It was painful. And God still placed it in Scripture because generations of hurting people would need those words. So bring your fear to Jesus. Bring your anger. Bring your confusion. But do not let your feelings become your God. Feelings are real, but they are not always true. They can show you what is happening inside you. They cannot always tell you what is happening around you. The disciples felt like they were going to die. But Jesus had already said they were going to the other side. Their feelings said, this is the end. His promise said, we are not done yet. And then Jesus looked at them and asked, why are you afraid, you have little faith? He was not saying the storm was small. He was showing them that their view of him was too small. They had seen him heal the sick. They had seen him free people. They had watched him do what no normal person could do. Yet the moment the waves rose, they forgot who was in the boat. And we do the same thing. We say we believe God created the world. We say we believe he parted the Red Sea. We say we believe Jesus walked on water, raised the dead, and walked out of the tomb. Then one hard season comes, and we act as if our problem is bigger than him. Fear asks, what if everything goes wrong? Faith asks, who is still in control? That is the difference. When you look into the future and believe your circumstances are in charge, fear will own you. When you believe you alone must control the outcome, fear will crush you. Because deep down, you know you do not have enough strength. But when you remember that the King of the universe is already in your future, faith begins to rise. God told Joshua to be strong and courageous. Not because Joshua was strong enough. Not because Joshua had every answer. God said, be strong and courageous, because I am with you. Your courage does not come from knowing what happens next. It comes from knowing who goes with you. Faith is not believing the storm is harmless. Faith is believing the storm is not in charge. Then Jesus stood up. He spoke to the wind and the sea. Peace, be still. In plain words, he told the storm, be quiet and stay quiet. And it obeyed. The wind stopped. The waves fell. The wild sea became calm. Imagine that silence. 1 second, the boat was surrounded by noise. The next second, everything was still. But I believe Jesus was not only speaking to the storm around them, he was also speaking to the storm inside them. Be quiet. Stay quiet. Remember who is here. Because sometimes the storm inside you becomes greater than the storm around you. The problem may be real. The pain may be deep. But your mind keeps making the waves higher. What if I lose everything? What if I never recover? What if this never changes? Jesus can calm the storm around you. But even when the waves continue, he can calm the storm within you. That is peace. Peace is not always the removal of trouble. Sometimes peace is knowing you are held while trouble is still happening. The disciples looked at Jesus and asked, what kind of man is this? Even the winds and the sea obey him. Their fear changed. At first they feared the storm. Now they stood in awe of the one who ruled it. Because what is more powerful than a storm? The one who can tell it to stop. This story is not mainly about how strong the storm was. It is about how strong Jesus is. And that brings us to the question every one of us must answer. What do you do when the storm is not a Bible story? What do you do when it is your diagnosis? Your marriage, your child, your money, your grief. There are 4 things you must remember. The first is simple. Look up. When the disciples stared only at the waves, fear grew. When they turned toward Jesus, everything changed. You cannot always stop the storm, but you can choose where you fix your eyes. Jesus had already taught them not to be anxious about their lives. He told them to look at the birds. Birds do not build bank accounts. They do not spend the night worrying about next month. They wake up and God feeds them. Then Jesus asked a powerful question. Are you not worth more than the birds? God takes care of the birds. God clothes the flowers. And your Heavenly Father already knows what you need. Worry cannot add 1 hour to your life, but it can steal the joy from the hour you have right now. So stop staring only at the waves. Look up. Fix your eyes on the one who made the sea, the one who entered the boat, the one who promised to bring you through. But looking up is only the beginning, because God never meant for you to survive the storm alone. The second thing is this. Look around. You need people with you. The disciples were not alone in that boat, and neither should you be. There will be moments when your own faith feels weak. There will be days when you pray, but you do not feel strong. There will be nights when fear keeps talking. That is when you need people around you who can remind you of what is true. You need someone who can say, God is still good. Jesus is still with you. The storm is not the end of your story. Sometimes you cannot see God working in your own life. But then you look around and see what he is doing in someone else. You see a marriage being restored. You see someone getting free from addiction. You see a family walking through pain with deep faith. You see a person who should have given up, but they are still standing. And their faith helps your faith breathe again. That is why isolation is so dangerous. When you are alone, fear gets louder. The lies grow. The storm feels bigger. But when you are around faithful people, courage spreads. Courage is contagious. Imagine if just one disciple in that boat had stood up and said, wait, Jesus is here. We are not going down. That one voice could have changed the whole room. You need people like that. Not people who pretend the storm is not real. Not people who give you empty answers. Not people who only tell you what you did wrong. You need people who will get in the boat with you. People who will pray when you cannot pray. People who will carry you when you cannot walk. People who will point you back to Jesus. Later in the story, some friends bring a paralyzed man to Jesus. The room is full, so they climb onto the roof. They tear a hole in it. Then they lower their friend down in front of Jesus. That man got close to Jesus because his friends refused to leave him on the mat. You need mat carriers, and you need to become one. There will be times when you borrow someone else's faith, and there will be times when someone borrows yours. This life was never meant to be lived alone. The Bible says the person who walks with wise people becomes wise, but the person who runs with fools gets hurt. The people around you matter. They are either helping your fear grow or helping your faith grow. So look around. Ask yourself, who is in my boat? Do they push me toward Jesus? Do they tell me the truth? Do they pray with me? Do they help me obey God when I am scared? Because when the waves rise, the voices around you can either pull you into panic or lead you back to peace. The third thing is this. Look ahead. This one is hard because when you are in pain, you only want the pain to stop. You do not want a lesson. You do not want a speech. You just want relief. But if God is truly in control, then your storm is not meaningless. God never wastes pain. Sometimes a storm corrects you. That happened to Jonah. God told Jonah to go one way. Jonah ran the other way. The storm got his attention, but not every storm is punishment. Sometimes the storm is preparation. James says to count it as joy when we face different kinds of trials. That sounds impossible. How can pain be joy? Because the testing of your faith produces endurance. And endurance builds something inside you that comfort never could. Everyone wants to be strong. Nobody wants to be sore. We want deep faith. We just do not want the pressure that builds it. We ask God to make us stronger. Then we beg Him to remove the very place where strength is being formed. Think about a gym. Muscles grow through pressure. Weight pushes against you. It hurts. But the pressure is not trying to destroy you. It is building you. Your storm may feel like punishment. But what if it is preparation? The disciples would face another storm later. This time, Jesus would walk on the water. Peter would see Him and say, Lord, if that is you, tell me to come. And Jesus would say, come. Peter would step out of the boat. Why was he willing to do that? Because he had already seen Jesus rule a storm. The first storm taught him something he would need in the next one. This time, the disciples asked, who is this man? Later, they would say, you are the Son of God. Their understanding grew in the storm. Their faith grew in the storm. Their view of Jesus grew in the storm. And yours can too. You know Jesus as Savior because you needed to be saved. You know Him as healer because you needed healing. You know Him as provider because there was a time when you had nothing. You know Him as peace because your life was full of fear. There are parts of Jesus you often meet only in the storm. David is another example. Before he stood in front of Goliath, he stood alone in a field. He watched sheep. He fought lions and bears. He learned to use a sling. He learned to worship. He learned to trust God when nobody was watching. That field may have felt like a forgotten place, but it was not punishment. It was preparation. David thought he was taking care of sheep. God was preparing a king. And maybe God is doing something like that in you. You cannot see it yet. You would not have chosen this road. You would not have written this part of your story, but God may be building patience in you. He may be growing courage. He may be teaching you how to help someone else one day. He may be stripping away your need to control everything. He may be showing you that His presence is enough. Paul says our troubles are preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond comparison. That does not mean your pain is small. It means eternity is greater. It means this is not all there is. It means the storm has an end. It means God is doing work that you cannot fully see. So do not lose heart. Your outer life may feel weak, but God can renew you on the inside day by day. And Romans 8:28 says, God works in all things for the good of those who love Him and are called according to His purpose. All things, even this, even the thing you wish never happened, even the chapter you would erase, even the storm that makes no sense. If it is not good yet, God is not done yet. But to trust what God will do ahead, you must remember what He has already done behind you. The fourth thing is this. Look back. Look back. The disciples' biggest problem was not the storm. It was that they forgot who Jesus was. They woke Him and asked, do you not care? But they had already seen Him care. They had watched Him touch sick people. They had seen Him heal the hurting. They had watched Him help people everyone else avoided. The evidence was already there. Fear simply made them forget it. And fear can do the same thing to you. It can make one painful season feel bigger than every good thing God has ever done. It can make you forget the prayers He answered, the doors He opened, the people He sent, the times He carried you when you had no strength left. So when you cannot see God's faithfulness ahead, look back at His faithfulness behind you. Remember the last storm. You thought it would end you, but you are still here. You cried. You struggled. You did not understand. But somehow God carried you through one day at a time. And there is one place we must always look when we wonder whether God cares. The cross. Do not measure God's love by your current circumstances. Measure it by the cross. Romans 5-8 says God showed His love for us while we were still sinners. Christ died for us before we cleaned ourselves up, before we became better people, before we had strong faith, before we had anything to offer. Jesus gave His life for us. That is the proof. When your circumstances make you question God's heart, the cross shows you His heart clearly. Think about the day Jesus died. Imagine standing near the cross. You had watched Him heal people. You had heard Him teach. You believed He was the Son of God. But now He was nailed to a tree. His followers were afraid. His enemies were celebrating. And then Jesus took his final breath. In that moment, it would have looked like God had lost control. It would have looked like evil had won. It would have looked like every promise had failed. But God was not losing. He was saving the world. What looked like the greatest defeat was becoming the greatest victory. What looked like the end was only the beginning. 3 days later, the tomb was empty. The cross teaches us something we must never forget. God can be doing his greatest work in the moment when it looks like he is doing nothing. You may not understand your storm today. The disciples did not understand theirs. The followers of Jesus did not understand the cross on Friday. But Sunday changed how they saw Friday. And one day God may let you look back and see what you cannot see now. You may see how he protected you, how he redirected you, how he strengthened you, how he used your pain to help someone else survive. But even when you never get every answer in this life, you still have the cross. You still have the empty tomb. You still have the promise that Jesus has overcome the world. That is why Jesus said, "In me, you may have peace." He did not promise an easy life. He said we would face trouble. Storms will come. But then he said, "Take heart, I have overcome the world." That means peace is not found in controlling every outcome. Peace is found in knowing the one who has already won. Paul said he learned the secret of being content in every situation. Notice that word, learned. Peace did not arrive because all his problems disappeared. He learned it while life was hard. He learned that Jesus was enough when he had plenty, and Jesus was enough when he had nothing. He learned that his situation could change without changing who God was. That kind of peace makes no sense on paper. Philippians 4 says that when we bring our requests to God with prayer and thanksgiving, his peace guards our hearts and minds. The waves may still be moving. The doctor may still be running tests. The relationship may still be broken. The answer may still be delayed. But somehow God places a guard around your heart. You still cry, but you are not without hope. You still hurt, but you know you are held. You still feel the wind, but the wind no longer owns you. That is the peace of Jesus. Sometimes he calms the storm around you. But when you surrender to him, he will calm the storm within you. So what do you do when the storm comes? Look up. Get your eyes off the waves and fix them on Jesus. Look around. Stay close to people who will carry you when your faith feels weak. Look ahead. Trust that God is not wasting your pain. And look back. Remember the cross, the empty tomb, and every time God has carried you before. Maybe today your sea is calm. Be thankful. Enjoy it. But keep these truths close because storms can rise quickly. Maybe you are in the middle of one right now. Your boat feels small. The waves feel too high. And Jesus seems silent. Hear this clearly. His silence does not mean he is absent. His peace does not mean he does not care. And the storm does not mean his promise has failed. Jesus is still in the boat. He is still Lord over the wind. He is still Lord over the waves. He is still Lord over your future. And when he says he will bring you through, the storm does not get the final word. Jesus does.